Well, and you know what, and I heard you guys talking about Trump, and you know what, that's why, if nothing else, Trump proves that people are desperate for real leadership.
Yes.
I mean, we've been drinking sand because we've been so thirsty for leadership in America for a long time. And so, and that sand is President Obama, and Trump comes along, and he is like the tall drink of cool water when it comes to speaking plainly. And that's what Senator Cruz does too. And obviously, you know, Senator Cruz came out and supported Trump in his plain speak about the issues of the day because it is important.
Yeah.
What I love about Senator Cruz, though, is that he, you know, I think he is a fighter, but he's also very measured and thoughtful in the way that he approaches things, and he approaches everything through the lens of the Constitution. You know, when he was young, he memorized the Constitution, and he went around and presented that, and I find that fascinating that he was, at a young age, was so interested, and I think a lot of that comes from his growing up and his father being, you know, from Cuba, where he was imprisoned and tortured, you know, by the government there, and he came to America with $100 in his pocket and to follow the American dream. And I know that has an impact on a family, and that's probably, you know, that's where the root of liberty was planted in Senator Cruz and has been, you know, watered and seeded and fertilized all these years to bring him to this point. And let me say one more thing. So when he ran for Senate in Texas, he actually had a 2% approval rating. When he launched his campaign, he had a 2% approval rating with a 3% margin of error. So he went from potentially -1 to winning that election, and he knows how to win. He knows how to build a coalition of grassroots folks who just want someone who's going to stand strong and speak plainly and do what they say they're going to do. And I'm seeing him implement that same philosophy and strategy in this election as well.
You know, he also has a wonderful background in law. He doesn't come across as an attorney type, but he has that solid background to understand constitutional law, and that's so important with these candidates. I mean, that's in fact one thing where Ted Cruz shines above a lot of these other candidates, especially Donald Trump, because he doesn't have that kind of background. Although I'm intrigued by Donald Trump's business acumen. I'm really intrigued by Ted Cruz's solid legal background, and I think in this country right now we could use a combination of both. In fact, Trevor Loudon a year ago had suggested that Ted Cruz create a dream team of a sort, and that was to announce who his cabinet would be and who his vice president would be. Does Senator Cruz have any plans to announce to us who he might pick as his cabinet?
You know, I don't know, but I'll tell you what. I am actually leaving tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock to go to Houston, and I have the great honor of seeing him, Senator Cruz, tomorrow night, and meeting his wife and his young girls. And I'm going to talk to him about that if I get the chance, because I think you're right. I heard that Trevor Loudon speech, and he is exactly right. Yep. And it would be a genius thing to do.
I think so, too.
Yeah, and, you know, and usually, the last thing I think we need, just on paper, is another attorney in Washington, D.C., right?
Right.
But I think, you know, I would classify Senator Cruz as more of a constitutional scholar. And really, you know, one thing that a lot of people don't know is when he was he's worked in a lot of different sectors of both government and private sector. He's, you know, negotiated on foreign lands with France. And he also was in the private sector and did build a very successful business, a part of a business that he was charged with building, and he talks about that in his book, Time for Truth, and I was very impressed by that. So he does have that business experience, that practical, everyday man, making payroll, recruiting good candidates, that experience, and I think that's very important for our candidates because, you know, again, government is not supposed to create jobs. And if you've been a job creator, you know that, and you know how government can get in the way as well. Right.
Well, a couple of the areas that he focused on when he was in the private sector, according to a Wikipedia article that I'm looking at right now, is that he worked on matters relating to the National Rifle Association. So there he was in the private practice supporting gun rights, and he also helped prepare testimony for the impeachment proceedings against President Clinton. Isn't that interesting? I like that. Maybe he has some, maybe he should begin to talk to some of his House buddies and have them start writing impeachment proceedings against President Obama just to stop this man in his tracks, Wendy.
I think the better.
No, it is astounding to me the level of destruction that's going on in our country right now. And I think without a bold choice, without a very bold, strong, solid choice like Ted Cruz in the White House, and again, to me, it's all about who can win. We can nominate somebody, but if they can't beat the Democrat, if they can't beat not only the Democrat but the media,
that's right,
and dominate the media and beat the Democrat, it doesn't matter. We've got to do that, and then have someone in there who's going to turn back, the clock a little bit on some of these government overreach programs. And one of the things that Ted Cruz said was, live by the pen and die by the pen. Mm-hmm. One of the first things he's going to do is put together a team to look at every executive order that President Obama has passed and start to dismantle those ones that exceed his authority as president or are unconstitutional.
Well, I've said that for a long time, that the candidate that I'm going to support wholeheartedly, 100%, both feet in, is the guy or woman who comes up and says, I'm going to Washington to repeal laws, not to make laws. Mm-hmm. Or I'm to Michigan, going to Lansing to repeal laws, not make laws. We have an onion, a putrid onion filled with legislation that needs to be peeled back, layer by layer by layer.
I agree. And, one thing I'd like to say to you and your listeners, there's a lot of good candidates. And I know that a lot of people, may be looking at 1, 2, or 3 candidates in this broad field of 15. One of the challenges is to make sure that we don't end up with, so many candidates splitting the vote that, the moderate gets through with 30%. We don't want that.
Right.
And so what I'm asking people to do is, look, if you right now love Trump or Scott Walker or Ben Carson or whoever, great, or Rand Paul even, great. But if Senator Cruz is one of your top 3, make sure you stay in touch with the campaign, because we want to make sure that we can build a relationship with you. I'm not trying to necessarily change your mind from your first choice, because we get that, and if that happens, that's not, that's fine. But that's not the goal. The goal is to be there in case your candidate doesn't make it to the primary. So you have a relationship built with us. We know you, you know us, and we can welcome you into the Cruz crew.
Give us a website, Wendy.
The website is tedcruz.org.
Well, that's easy enough. tedcruz.org works for me.
And let me give you my email, too. If anyone's listening and wants to get more information or get involved, my email is really easy. It's wendyday1776 @gmail.com. And we have Rafael Cruz coming in at the end of the month. That's Ted Cruz's father that I mentioned earlier. He's going to be in several locations throughout Michigan on the 29th, 30th, and 31st. And I will get you those dates and times so you guys have that information. We'd love to have folks come out. They're free events. And he's really going to be telling the story about his trip. It's not necessarily a Ted Cruz rally at all, but it's really about Rafael Cruz, and he's a pastor, talking about his experience coming over from communist Cuba, finding God, finding liberty, and knowing that we have to fight for liberty, especially as Christians, and for religious liberty. So it's going to be an amazing series of speeches that he's going to be able to give here in Michigan.
That's interesting. Wendy, we met the other day at a presentation that you were giving to the Macomb County Women's Republican Coalition, and that was in your outreach when you were wearing your outreach hat, and you were talking about some interesting concepts of reaching 30 to 40-year-old people. And I think that's real important that we do actively for this 2016 presidential election. In fact, I was thinking it would be really great if we could get Phil's son, who's quite a liberal, in the studio, you on the line, and I'd like you to talk him into becoming a conservative.
I love talking to Democrats and to liberals because, I used to be a liberal Democrat, a very liberal Democrat, and I've made that transition over time, and so I have great compassion and empathy for people where they're at, and I think, loving them where they're at is really important, and just asking good questions. I as you know, Janice, I tell people, I'm like, we need to stop being excavators and start being gardeners and planting seeds and watering them occasionally and fertilizing them with love and relationship. And then, and hopefully those seeds of liberty will start to grow and flourish instead of bringing in the backhoe and, beating them over the head with a scoop until they, submit to our ideas, which doesn't obviously happen. So,
right. It's interesting because as dedicated as conservatives are to the law and the rule of law and justice, it seems that liberals are dedicated to this utopian world that represents fantasy as far as I'm concerned, but there's somewhere in the middle that we have to meet.
The destruction of it too, Janice.
What's that, dear?
I said we can see the destruction of liberalism. Policy, these ideas, this fantasy. I mean, it's just destroyed families, neighborhoods. It's imprisoned thousands and thousands of men and women in prison because of liberalism, and we have to pin all this bad legislation and laws on that donkey. Have to.
You know what, Wendy? We're running out of time, and we want to again give your website. That's wendyday1776 at gmail.com, was it?
That's my email, and then tedcruz.org is where you can go and get plugged into the campaign. And like I said, even if he's not your first choice, if he's your second or third, go sign up there and stay in touch with the campaign. We want to know. We want to hear from you, and we want to be able to communicate with you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. We'll look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. You're welcome. Have a great day. Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Well, gentlemen, I thought that was a very good interview, and I just want to say God bless the families of our fallen heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, again, I'm sure every personality that's on the radio at Wham will join us in that.
To continue the roundtable discussions by mailing correspondence to Art of Michigan, Post Office Box 135, Garden City, Michigan 48135.
Or follow Phil and Del at artofmichigan.com. You can also send emails to artofmichigan@hotmail.com. And most of all, continue to listen every Saturday and tell a friend.